Welcome to the Minnesota Rovers Tuesday evening presentation. Minnesota Rovers is an outdoors club based in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Our members organize trips that range from 1 hour to 2 weeks in Minnesota or further afield. Examples of our activities include hiking, biking, backpacking, skiing, snowshoeing, paddling, and rock climbing. We also organize conservation and trail clearing trips. Our members have experience and skills in many outdoor activities, so if you want to learn a new outdoor activity, we can probably help you. For more information, go to mnrovers.org. Now let's move on to this week's presentation.
Tonight, you're here to hear from Fran L on what can we do to reduce our personal use of plastic. Fran enjoys all sorts of outdoor activities, but especially sea kayaking. She has been on kayak trips on 3 of the 5 Great Lakes, as well as in Canada, New Zealand, and Baja. She has also led rover kayak camping trips to Voyageurs National Park. Fran is a Leave No Trace Master Educator and holds the BCU 3-Star Award in Coastal Kayaking. The impact of microplastics in our waters has become a particular concern for her. Fran has been a rover member since 2007 and a board member for 10 of those years. She is now chair of the newly formed Conservation Committee. Please join me now in welcoming tonight's speaker, Fran L.
I am not a huge expert on reducing plastic use. A year and a half ago, I became a Leave No Trace Master Educator, and a lot of what we focused on were principles of Leave No Trace in the outdoors. Basically, reducing the kind of impact that we have on the outdoors and on campsites and on wildlife and on other people. And we talked about, packing out what you bring in and all of that kind of stuff. But more recently, as we've become more aware of the problem of plastic and microplastics in particular, I've become interested in that. Partly because of my Leave No Trace stuff, I attended several webinars in December and January about microplastics. The first one that I attended, which was just informational, really was frightening and overwhelming because plastic is so ubiquitous. We have so filled the world with plastic. And then the second one really talked about political organizing. But for February, Ramsey and Hennepin County, as well as some organizations like Friends of the Mississippi, organized a month of people making efforts to reduce their plastic use in various kinds of ways. When I sit and look at things around me, it seems, there's plastic everywhere. There's plastic on my laptop and there's plastic on my speakers, and I have a plastic keyboard and a plastic phone case and plastic prescription bottles, and it's everywhere. And so it feels a little bit overwhelming, but there are things that we can do to reduce some of the use of it. All right. Here we go. So the problem with plastics, one of the biggest problems, we all know and we've seen, the wildlife that gets encased in a plastic 6-pack ring from pop or beer. But more than that, plastic breaks up into microplastics, and they collect in rivers and lakes and oceans. They affect birds and wildlife. There have been some studies where they found some storks who were reluctant to migrate and were staying where they were eating garbage. They sometimes mistake small bits of plastic for food. It affects birds and wildlife, and now it's in the food chain, and it turns up in the food we eat, and they've even found it in breast milk. recent research indicates, and this is just like in the last month, they've started talking about, they knew that it collected in human bodies. They knew that it migrated to major organs like the kidneys and the liver. But now we know that even more than those, it migrates to the brain. And we don't really know the full impact of microplastics on the brain. But it is likely that we all have microplastics in our brains, which is pretty damn scary to me. Another issue about microplastics, about plastic products, is that most of them are made from oil. So 4 to 8% of the world's oil goes for plastic production. And plastic has really become ubiquitous. It is everywhere. I am a kayaker, and my kayaks are made of different kinds of plastic. You know, it is nearly impossible to get around, and we're not going to be able to totally go away from using it, but we can certainly use it a lot less and be more careful with what we do with it. So, some plastic facts. More than 1/3 of plastics go into packaging. So at the grocery store, they have stuff packaged, and sometimes it's styrofoam and it has, cellophane over it. Lots and lots of it in packaging. 60% of plastics come from high-income countries like the US. But often it ends up being a problem for low-income countries. They have fewer resources to even attempt to recycle it. They don't have much choice because products they need are made of plastic and come in plastic packaging. And some of the sources of microplastics are like tire dust and pellets and personal care items and clothing. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that in a minute. Plastics, we haven't always had plastics, and humans have been able to live without plastics. The first man-made plastic compound was in 1862. And they experimented with some other ones, around 1880, but it was too expensive, and those companies went out of business. And then in 1908, DuPont developed cellophane. Oops, they made it waterproof in 1927. And in 1920, they also started developing PVC. Teflon came around in 38. And in the 50s, they started having improved strength to plastic products, and they developed styrofoam. All of these things, and in 65, they developed Kevlar, which, I have a Kevlar kayak. A lot of these things are useful, and yet they've really weren't a huge part of human life until really about the past 70 years. And they were widely marketed. But why is it that we wanted to use it? First, it's super lightweight. And that's a huge thing. And that's a thing in some of our gear that we use. They're hugely lightweight. They're really convenient, and they're non-breakable. So we stopped having glass bottles because breakage was an issue, and the weight was an issue. We shifted from some stuff that was in metal cans because they were heavier than plastic, at least until we developed some of the aluminum stuff. And as we converted to using plastic, we moved away, and there was kind of no going back. And so that's kind of how we got here. So what about recycling? Most of us make every effort to recycle. And here's a list of the 7 different kinds of plastic. And if you look at the bottom of your plastic products, you'll usually see that little recycling triangle with arrows on it and some kind of number. So 1 is plastic bottles and jars. So your water bottles or pop bottles or peanut butter jars. Those kinds of things are 1. 2 are like milk jugs or shampoo bottles. 3 are various kind of makeup and cosmetic containers. 4 are squeeze bottles and cling wrap. 5 is yogurt and ice cream and cottage cheese kind of tubs. 6 is CD cases and those plastic knives and forks that people use, the foam clamshells. 7 is anything plastic that's not 1 through 6, and it also includes compostable kinds of plastic. You will occasionally see something, especially in food packaging, that says it's compostable. Or maybe your local coffee shop has tried to go greener and has plastic compostable cups, especially for some of the cold stuff. So this is how it's all packaged. But you can't recycle all of those things. You can't recycle, you can only recycle 1, 2, and 5. That is the water bottles and peanut butter jars and the milk jugs and the and that stuff. You mostly can't recycle 3, 4, 6, and 7. You can't recycle plastic film. Now, there's some exceptions, and I'm not super familiar with Ridwell. It's a newer kind of service where they do stuff. You have to pay, but they do stuff to help recycle some of the stuff that you can't recycle elsewhere. You can't recycle large plastic items, so toys and laundry baskets and storage bins that we use to put our gear in, right? And plastic lawn furniture. Those things are not recyclable. And you also can't recycle single-use utensils like those plastic knives and forks and straws. Those things are not recyclable. Even among the stuff that's recyclable, we don't recycle it. A lot of what gets put in recycling bins can't be recycled because people don't really know, or some of it isn't fully cleaned, and food or stuff contaminates the other stuff in the bin, and then none of it gets recycled. People actually go through the stuff that comes in when the city or whoever picks up your recycling, they go through and they sort it all out. And a lot of it's not recyclable. And sometimes companies act as if it is. We talk about wish cycling. People go, oh, maybe this is recyclable. Or companies convince people because of the little triangle with the arrows that it's recyclable, and they throw it in the bin and it needs to be sorted out. Only 5 to 6% of plastics in the US are recycled. Compostable plastics, don't put those in recycling bin. They have a different temperature point for recycling. And so you need to compost those if you can, and not put them in the recycling bin. Otherwise, they end up getting separated out. A lot of stuff, as I mentioned, gets contaminated with food. Sometimes people, I mean, really, you have to fully clean out your peanut butter jars or whatever it is that's had food in it. Some people run them through the dishwasher, make sure that they're pretty clean so it doesn't contaminate the other stuff in the bin. Some recycling processes are limited, and some of the process of recycling create microplastics. Also, plastic, whereas metal and glass, you can actually recycle an unlimited number of times. Plastic usually has a limited number of times, and then it starts breaking down into the microplastics. So what can we do? I mean, this is pretty overwhelming. It's hard to recycle. It doesn't get recycled. It ends up in landfill. There's not space in landfill. What can we do? And nobody can totally get rid of their use of plastics, but we can all do a lot. And one of the things I'd encourage you to do is start thinking about what you can do to reduce your plastic use. And when I'm done, it may be that some of you guys have ideas that I haven't had. You know, I got interested and started reading about this and told Stacy I'd do a presentation because I thought awareness was so important. But there may be people here who know more about it than I do, or who have some ideas that I'm not mentioning here. So first of all, and I think most of us have moved towards recycling, and most of us try to bring our own, at least grocery bags, maybe produce bags, to the grocery store. I know that that it took a while to always remember to have them. And I keep some in my car and some by my door. Having them in my car, one of the things I found is even when I intended to, I'd suddenly think of something I needed from a store, and I wouldn't have my bags along. So you have to start changing habits step by step. Buying more unpackaged foods and vegetables. Now that may mean switching grocery stores. Some stuff I like to get at Trader Joe's, and they even sell reusable produce bags, but some of their produce is just already wrapped up in plastic and in packaging. So try to buy unpackaged fruits and vegetables and produce. And then if you need bags, use your reusable bags from home. Think about buying bulk items. I recently was reading that many, not all brands, but many brands of tea bags have microplastics in them. If you can buy loose leaf tea, bring it home, in your own bag and store it in a jar. Tea, spices, things like beans and rice, rather than buying bags of beans or rice. Go to co-op and get them in bulk. Co-ops have them often in bulk. Not many other stores that I've found in the Twin Cities do, but do that and then bring them home and store them in jars. Most of us do have plastic freezer bags. I am reusing all of the ones that I already have, and I'll use them as long as that's reasonable, and wash them out. Of course, one of the issues is if you're seriously washing and scrubbing them, you're probably creating microplastics. You're sort of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But think about and be aware of all of the ways that you're using plastic. In doing some research, if you use cloth bags, you can keep baked goods in cloth bags in the freezer for up to a month without freezer burn. So, you want to not buy more than you can use, but you can freeze bakery items for limited amounts of time. Some people and some places sell those reusable silicone Ziplocs that are supposed to last forever. I've had some success with those, but I've also had some where the seal stopped working and they were kind of pointless. And then I had another piece of stuff that, that I didn't have any use for. Some people to cover stuff use beeswax cloths. You can buy those. You can also make those. One of the things that I'm kind of hoping for conservation activity is that we may have a time where we just get together and make beeswax cloths, or even make our own reusable bags, so that for people to use when they buy produce, reusable produce bags. I saw a pattern online for reusable sandwich bags with a little flap over them. And then also think about using glass and ceramic and metal storage for things. All of those things kind of work. Most of us have probably moved to bringing our own reusable cup to coffee shops. I've moved to doing that, and I try to, if I'm not sure I'm going to stop, I try to have one cup that's in the car and then cups at home, but having reusable cups to use. If I go places and I'm eating, sometimes portions. Thursday night after the Ice Castles, the burger portions were way more than I could eat, and I split it with somebody. But often people use takeout containers. Some places, and I encourage them, use takeout containers that don't use so much plastic. If you're getting takeout, have your own bag and tell them not to give you a plastic bag with the containers in it, but use your own bag. Have them leave out plastic utensils. and bring your own. And in fact, I've tried to move towards having some reusable utensils in my car in case of some of these kinds of things. Many municipalities and states have bag taxes or bag bans, just as many of them have, deposits on cans and plastic bottles and things like that. And you can support that kind of legislation that pushes places to not use so many of those bags. And some places have moved away from using plastic bags at all. We can pressure corporations. We can say, I'm not going to shop at your place because of all the plastic packaging. Send them letters and tell them exactly why, so that they know that they're losing business by doing that, and they start looking into other kinds of options, other kinds of products. So I have a cat, and a big cat, and he goes through a certain amount of cat litter. And I have one big plastic cat litter container that I take to buy my litter in bulk. So I don't have a whole bunch of plastic cat litter containers. You can also buy them in cardboard, although typically those have plastic handles because the things are heavy. Sometimes you can buy them in bags. Look at what the bags are made of, because sometimes they coat stuff and have plastic stuff on the inside. But there are things that you can do to buy that in bulk. Some people have moved to using shampoo bars instead of buying bottles of shampoo. When you are looking at containers, check out whether they're truly recyclable. What's that number? Um, different places are able to recycle different things, and check out for your city or municipality or waste disposal company or whatever, what it is they can truly recycle, so that you're not just wish cycling. Reuse what you have as much as possible. Participate in neighborhood buy nothing groups. Sometimes you may use something for a period of time and then you may not need it anymore. And rather than throwing it out, you can post it and somebody else may want it or may use it. Other kinds of products. So sadly, I use a number of prescriptions. You can recycle your prescription bottles. Walgreens takes them if they're clean and have the label removed. You can buy bamboo toothbrushes with natural bristles to avoid having all those plastic toothbrushes that go into landfill. Some cosmetic products, especially face scrubs and things like that, have microbeads in them. A recent cosmetic study found only 24% of 8,000 products tested were free of plastics. So if you can research what's in the personal care items that you use, the cosmetic kinds of items or the lotions or whatever, do that. And while I'm mentioning it's not so much plastic, but if you go to the ocean, look at your sunscreen and look at sunscreens that don't that aren't bad for coral reefs. So look at what's in the products that you use. Now, some people really have moved away from plastic toys at all for their kids. That can be hard to do, but if you do have plastic toys, gift them, pass them on, neighborhood buy nothing, donate to a local preschool or whatever, when your kids outgrow them. Laundry detergent. I have moved to just using laundry sheets instead of buying either liquid laundry detergent, which of course comes in those big plastic jugs, or other kinds of laundry detergent. The laundry sheets have worked pretty well for me. So here's a big problem for us outdoorsy people. Clothing. A lot of clothing actually made out of plastic. I mean, we use stuff that's microfleece, especially nylon, acrylic, polyester, and that can be a big problem, especially when you launder it. Like microfleece, you get microplastics when you launder it. Patagonia now actually recommends that its fleece be spot clean and that you avoid laundering it to avoid creating microplastics. You can hook up special microfiber filters to your washing machine, or an easier version is to put there's special bags that they have developed, and you could put microfleece kinds of clothing into these special bags in the laundry, which keeps it from releasing the microplastics into the laundry water and then into the water system. I have not done that at this point, and so I can't tell you how they work, but some of those products are out there. And some of the information that I read on them said that those laundry bags will last through 50 washings and stuff. You want to make what you have last a long time. So get good enough stuff that you're not going to want to throw it out immediately and make it last. Or if you're not going to use it, pass it on to somebody who will. A problem, I'm a kayaker. I have a Gore-Tex dry suit, and I have a neoprene wetsuit, and I have a Gore-Tex rain jacket, and often waterproof clothing is chemically treated. And often that means that chemicals are released. I don't have quick answers and easy answers for this, but I'm starting to rethink what I use and what I buy, and if I do have stuff, make it last as long as possible so that I'm not putting it back out into landfill or wherever. But use natural fibers as much as possible. A long time ago, I figured out that I didn't like synthetic base layers because they would stink, and I preferred wool. And of course, wool is a natural fiber and doesn't have quite as much of a cost in terms of the environment. But cotton and wool and natural kinds of fibers, I know that cotton is a problem outdoors, but various kinds of smart wool might be a better option. Another problem for outdoors people, probably a lot of you dehydrate your own food. Use food dehydrators and then seal it up in one of these kinds of sealing things before the trip, which seals it all in plastic. When we're packing for camping trips, we want to pack stuff that's light and waterproof, and most dehydrated food ends up packed in plastic, whether it's what we dehydrate and package at home or whether it's commercially produced. And so the next step is maybe starting to think about what really needs to be carried that way. Certainly, we're not going to be carrying stuff in heavy glass containers out into the wilderness because they can break and they're heavy. But starting to think about how we can do that and ways to use reusable packaging or to minimize plastic use when we're packing for camping trips. In some ways, what I'm trying to do today is just to start with awareness and have each of us think, and as part of the challenge that they're doing around plastic use this month, they're encouraging people to make small steps and to think about small goals and small things that they can do. And remember that, people manage without the proliferation of plastics for many, many years, and they had to store stuff and they had to manage stuff. Plastics have become easy for us to use, but that doesn't mean that they're the only option. There was a global plastics treaty that was proposed and had the support of 175 nations. Sadly, it was blocked by Saudi Arabia and Russia, partly because it was some of their petroleum products were being used in plastics. But be aware of some of these efforts. A lot of times local and state legislation has made a difference, especially in around the use of plastic bags. Um, and your personal choices can make a difference. So hopefully I gave you some practical ideas and maybe some ideas about what you can do. And maybe in our discussion now, you might have some ideas that I didn't think of because I'm not an expert and I'm new to this, but I want people to start thinking things through and problem solving and factoring plastic in as you make your decisions about your day-to-day life and the products that you buy and the things that you use. So that's really about all I had to say. Um, but I'd love to hear what you guys have to say.
I would like to add some comments.
Great.
I've been doing this for several years now, and our co-op system is the best here. We've had co-ops since the 70s, and I bring jars in with me, and they have like liquid laundry detergent. They have soaps. They have a lot of things that you can just keep reusing the same jars or whatever. And there's also a place in Minneapolis called Tare Market, Tare, where they also have things that co-ops don't have, like, for instance, salad dressings that you can refill jars with, or a lot of silicone containers.
Mhm.
So that's my 2 cents. Thank you for this, though. This is great.
You know, I'm going to add on to what Sherry was talking about. I've read about the Terror Market, but there's also something in St. Paul called the Evergreen Collective and 1104 Grand Avenue in St. Paul that is, I think, similar to Terror. And food co-ops, the food co-ops have a lot of stuff you can get if you bring your own containers too.
Yeah, food co-ops, a lot of the when you're talking about bulk stuff,
Yeah.
are really some of the best places. Yeah. So about silicone containers, have people had better luck? I mean, mine stopped sealing after a while.
The ones that I've seen at the Tier Market are like you roll them up.
Oh,
I can't recall how it closes though. It's like I think it seemed like an old-fashioned sandwich bag like a paper bag that you would just roll the top over, and it might have had something to keep it closed, but I don't recall.
Cool.
There's a question at the end. Venki is wondering, does wax paper have plastic in it?
I believe that it does, but hang on. Because I was reading something that said that, you know, to use up what you've got, but then don't buy any more of plastic bags, and wax paper was mentioned. Um, I don't see it. How eco-friendly is it?
Thank you to everybody who's put all these different comments in here, all these different suggestions. They're really informative.
Okay, it's better than plastic. It still has some of its own problems. Yeah. It's basically simplest form is just paper that's been specially coated with a thin layer of paraffin wax. And I use parchment paper for some things too.
So that's the next question here. Does parchment paper or nonstick aluminum foil have plastic?
Um,
Good question.
there's different kinds of parchment, and some has plastic and some does not. But the stuff for baking does not have plastic, I think. I'll look this up and I'll send some notes around.
Linda,
Aluminum,
are you on the Google or Minnesota Rovers IO group?
is.
If not, we could get your email and send you the information. Yeah.
Aluminum foil, if it's clean, is recyclable.
Mhm.
Oh, and here Rob refills his laundry soap at the co-op. Yeah. And you know what we might do? It could be that this is something that the Conservation Committee could collect some information on, and we could even put it on the Rover website as a possibility about ways to reduce plastic and alternatives to do some of this kind of stuff.
Hi, this is Carol, and Fran, thank you so much. That was excellent. The state of Minnesota will actually come and talk to you about recycling, and they've been very forward thinking in their recycling abilities. But the comment about foil, for instance, that's very specific to your municipality. I know from trying to, yes, lots of back and forth online about if you wad it up, it is. But when I called my municipality, they said, no, don't put it in your recycling. So I just wanted to put that in there that it tends to be even, yeah, it's pretty local.
And I think that's true. I think that's true that every municipality or company that does recycling has different stuff that they recycle. And and that adds to the problem of people throwing stuff in that's not
Yeah.
recyclable,
Yeah.
or things like that.
Exactly.
It's it's hard to know, and most people want to do the right thing, but it's hard to necessarily know.
Yeah, again, the state will come and talk to us as a group or maybe to the conservation group about that because they've done some good work, Hennepin County.
Yeah,
Just
that's
wanted
cool.
to add that.
It's a good
Yeah.
resource.
So I would like to make a couple of comments to second what Carol was saying. It does vary by location, and it's mainly the counties that make the decisions on the recycling. We went on a seminar with Dakota County where we are, and one of the things I learned on that, which I didn't know, is black plastic you cannot recycle, full stop, at least in Dakota County, because they can't do anything with it because they can't make it a different color. So it does depend on the area you're in. The other thing I wanted to say, when I was hiking in the Cotswolds a couple of years ago, I ran into this woman that was a sheep farmer, and she was kind of complaining that no one uses wool anymore. And what that means is those poor little sheep go to be lamb chops instead of use wool. So if you can use wool, which is a wicking thing for hiking and stuff, rather than polyester,
as long as you're not allergic to it or anything, wool is kind of a good another good option to think about. And I don't know how smart wool, how much of that is wool and how much of that is other stuff. I'm not sure. I'm sure I could Google it, but I haven't.
Okay, thanks, Fran.
To get on the soapbox, one of the huge things is buying recycled goods, whether it be plastic or whatnot. You know, they have By the Yard that makes lawn furniture and whatnot, but corporations, to influence them, they follow the money. And if people are buying X product, whatever that damn product is, they will make more of it if they can make a profit on it. If we always have to have brand new and not recycled, then that's what they're going to put their investments in. And so I think for my part, I'm willing to spend more right now, hoping the trend will change. Just like at one point, computers were insanely expensive and now they're dirt cheap. I'm hoping for the same kind of trend by putting my money towards recycled goods that I buy. And off soapbox.
Thanks for watching this Minnesota Rovers presentation. If you want to see more, please click on the link to our channel or the subscribe button below. Thank you.